I don't know if you know this, but currently in the Dressage Judging Guidelines, it says 37 times that the riders must always maintain a contact. So the rules, the judging rules themselves, or guidelines themselves, are disincentivizing rein releases. They're saying that visible rein releases should attract a penalty, and the longer and the more visible the rein release, the more severe the penalty. So
thank you so much, Cristina Wilkins, for joining us today. We are very lucky to have you as a guest on Changing Rein. For those of you who don't know Cristina, she is well known in the equestrian and equitation science world. She's currently doing a PhD at the University of New England. She's also co-authored, I think, about 8 papers, some very highly influential papers. And she's been advocating for horse welfare for quite a long time now, and has also been an accomplished equestrian herself. So, Cristina, welcome to Changing Rein.
Thank you very much for having me. It was really great to be asked. And I really love your work, Karen. You were the pioneer with your PhD. I keep citing your work, so I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Going back to the composition of these boards, do you think there's a role for grassroots, grooms, people who are at the coalface? Is that, or would they? I know they'll have the same blind spots we all have, but would they bring a perspective that kind of career administrators might not have?
They probably would. I think every perspective should be at the table. Maybe not physically at the table, but they should be considered in the discussion. Mm-hmm. And the public obviously is a huge one, and the concerns for horse welfare in sports are not just coming from what people like to call the uneducated public. They are coming also from horse people who are in the sport and are seeing things derailing. So we shouldn't just dismiss them as activists. We should take their points of view and consider them as possible blind spots. That would help, I think.
Often you hear comment about people being uneducated who are like from outside of the industry. It's often a criticism that's put, oh, these people just don't understand. Now, I know, Cristina, you were part of a team that presented some evidence to the FEI based on a letter that you wrote back in February, and you did a presentation. I watched that presentation today as a bit of a refresher, and to me, it seems like you presented some pretty compelling sort of evidence, and yet it appears that evidence hasn't really been taken on board. But I'm really interested to hear your perspective of how that, and maybe you'd like to share a little bit about what you presented and your take on the response to that evidence.
Sure. So in my PhD, I'm searching for the factors that affect the welfare outcomes of human-horse interactions. So basically that means that I totally believe that when a human and a horse interact, most of the time, unless it's an exceptional circumstance, most of the time the intention is to have a good interaction, and it's a lot of the times it doesn't happen. So my question is, when did the wheels fall off? And why? When did it go pear-shaped? When did this interaction, this intention go pear-shaped? And what happened? What were the factors that were affecting it? So I have a special interest in horse sports because of my background. I know especially the Olympic sports more than racing, and I know the people. I've been in those pressure situations, etc. And then we came across the Crispin Parelius Johannessen's new photographs with his new very high speed, high definition camera that he was taking. And to be frank, I was a little horrified by the degree of compression of the horse's oral tissues in the dressage event. And of course, a lot of people who have seen those photos have seen a few photos, but we have seen hundreds of thousands of photos.
Can you just clarify, Christina, for people who might not have seen Crispin's work, what Crispin in particular for this presentation, what he was photographing, like what part of the horse he was photographing?
Yeah, sure. So Crispin likes to photograph horses in detail. He's a fine artist. He has always been interested in the detail and how horses are represented and how people see them. And he became really interested, once he started looking through the lens and through the zoom lens, he became really interested in the horse's mouth especially, and what was going on in the mouth and the face. And this new camera has allowed him to take photos in the competition arena. So these are not behind the scenes, they're not in the warm-ups, they're in front of the public. And he takes continuous photos. When I say continuous, the about 60 frames per second, but then, you know, the camera every now and again has to stop and cool down a bit and then carries on. But basically you can put together the whole dressage test image by image. And the reason why his work is so astounding is because you can't actually do that with video, even though we think that video is a great visual, you know, captures a great vision of reality. You can't actually, when you stop it, it's blurry. It doesn't give you any detail. And that's why he went back to the original, the very, very beginning of film, where films were put together by taking still images one after the other. And now with the technology, the photos that you can capture are absolutely incredible. And you can stitch them all together and see the horses moving around. And what we can see from those photos is that the riders never release. And the free walk on a long rein, perhaps, but there are never clear releases. You know, in equitation science, we are supposed to reward the horse for good responses with releases of pressure, and that means releases of rein pressure and leg pressure. And we're supposed to allow the horse to keep going until they make a mistake or they lose the thing, or we want to do something different, then we apply pressure. And then when the horse is doing what we want, we remove the pressure and they keep going. That's not happening in dressage at all. And we're talking about the top horses in the world and the biggest events in the calendar. And every single horse in the Grand Prix, which is what he's been photographing lately. So some horses you can see inside the mouth very, very clearly. Other horses you can see less because the lips may not be parted as much. But we see the photos that we looked at were showing enormous amounts of compression, really tight neck angles, a lot of pressure in the jowl, in the joint, you know, the joint between the face and the neck, in the pole area, in the eyes, and especially in the mouth. And I must admit that I was quite shocked because I had never realized just how much compression we put on horses' mouths with these bits. Mm. So I was really humbled because I'm a rider. I've jumped. Actually, Mita, my favorite memory of all time is jumping the Punchestown steeplechase course.
Oh, fabulous! Yeah. It's just up, I live just up the road. Yeah.
In the old times when when eventing was the long format.
Yeah.
And that's one of the memories that I hold on to. And so, and I just never thought about, once I saw the photos, I just couldn't get them out of my head. So anyway, we put together a letter of concern. That I'm working with a really top research team, and my supervisors and academic mentors are really experienced in horses and horse welfare. They include David Mello, who's the architect of the 5 domains, Paul McGreevy, who's published a lot on animal welfare and behaviour, but also my supervisors, Catherine Henshaw, and I also brought in Kati Tuomola, who did her PhD in oral lesions caused by bits specifically, and of course Crispin, because his photos are absolutely outstanding, and we're just really concerned that the horses are not getting much release, and it's really the question is not how come we have blue tongues, but how come is there a possibility that any horse at that level does not have a blue tongue, is my question that I would like answered, because it's relentless.
So, and those photos are available. I think anyone can go and have a look at those if they want to, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, there are a lot of photos available. For the presentation that we did to the FEI, we stitched together a whole test for one horse. For every test, there's about between 8,000 and 10,000 photographs. So it's a lot of work to process them. It's a lot of time, and it's a lot of work also to put the video together. So we can only do so much. And when you share photos in media articles, etc., well, it is the moment in time. Yes, it is the moment in time. But we can hardly find any good moments in time, because we are looking at the mouth all the time. Yeah. If you look at the horse front on, which is the trophy pictures that the industry likes to put in the magazines, you can't see the mouth. That's fine. You can't see the mouth. But when you look inside the mouth, it's not looking good. Yeah.
So if we think about training principles, which you've just sort of described briefly in terms of offering the horse some relief, so that you ask using pressure, the horse gives you the response that you want, you then release the pressure. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is these horses at this elite level are never getting that relief, or very few, very occasionally are getting some relief. Is that accurate, what I'm saying there?
Yeah, that's what we think is happening from putting together these image sequences, and it just so happens that the advisory group, the ethics advisory group, includes Andrew McLean, and he's been pushing hard together with that team to bring in what they call tests of self-carriage, where the riders have to release the reins for a few strides, and that's a really good baby step to get horses. But again, it's going to be a few strides of relief in an 8-minute performance. So we have other research questions, which is our research. This has really kind of driven my PhD a little bit off track, because we all of a sudden we said, well, if riders are not releasing, how come these horses are still performing? How come they still know that that's what they should be doing? What signals are they getting that tell them, yes, this is what you need to keep doing for a bit longer?
And that, I think, is where, and just sort of jumping in there, sorry, and that sort of is where Catherine Henschel has contributed to your presentation, and that's where hypersensitizing horses' flanks is critically important, because you then the leg cue then overwhelms, or the horse doesn't attend to to the constant pressure in in their mouth, and pays attention to that hypersensitized area of the leg. So that's why they're still going forward. Is that right, Christina?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you've got it. You got the message that she was trying to put forward. Absolutely spot on. That's what we think we're seeing, and this could be tied to why we see riders having to resort to whipping horses from the ground or from the saddle, which then leads to these really unfortunate media scandals. And we just had one here in Australia with Heath Ryan, and we had the infamous one from Charlotte Dujardin, Carlos Parra, and all these incidents are probably horses trying. We think, we don't have, we haven't done the research, but looking at learning theory and how horses learn and what's going on, that the horses are basically paying more attention to just keep moving forward despite the lack of rein releases. And that does not align with ethical training principles. So anyway, it's still early days. We're still looking at it, and we're thinking about it, and we'll probably be publishing something about that soon.
And using my systems thinking sort of lens, it sort of then ties into equipment to sort of mask horse behaviour, which I think you touched on that as well, where using tight nose bands then has the effect of masking the horse. That we were talking before about them not having a voice, or maybe it was Mita and I that were talking about, horses don't make a sound. So when they're in pain, they're not like a dog that might yelp or a cow that might bawl. They don't actually have a sound associated with pain, but they do have behaviours that we know are related to pain. And yet we've got pieces of equipment that can mask some of those behaviours. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Christina?
Sure. That is a really, really good point. And it's not only that, but we also have different interventions that are happening in some sports that mask these behaviors. And there is, for example, in Western pleasure, there is a lot of denerving, or I don't know the exact meter, you might know the actual term for it, but basically they disable the tail swishing, because the tail swishing is associated, and you get marked down for tail swishing. So they either cut the nerves, or they use Botox or some other ways to make it impossible for the horse to swish the tail. And we can do these things to mask facial expressions as well. So the noseband is one, because obviously the horses are opening the mouth because they're trying to deal with the mouth pressure, and so we close the mouth. And because now we're paying a lot of attention to the mouth, then they're using artificial foam and foaming agents to create a lot of fluff and a lot of white fluff, sticky fluff, that masks, that makes it difficult to see what's happening inside the mouth. And so it's like an arms race. Then the regulators have to figure out, okay, can we test for this mouth, for this artificial fluff? And what tests can we do to see whether a horse's tail has been interfered with? And it's just like a round and round and round and round. And my suggestion, which I presented at the International Society for Equitation Sciences conference, is that pressure, the amount of pressure, the degree of compression on tissues, should be an indicator in itself. That we don't just need to wait for the horse to have a pain face or kick out or swish their tail, that we can monitor the degree of compression on tissues with cameras. We have the camera equipment to do it. Why aren't we using that to check whether these riders are actually following the rules and showing lightness and harmony? Whether they deserve being rewarded with 8s and 7s and 9s and for that particular movement. How much pressure was on that horse for that particular movement? You know, can they do it without? Can they do it in self-carriage? You know, I would love to see not just tests for self-carriage, but actually tests for self-carriage in all the difficult movements. Whether it's a pirouette, whether it's a piaffe, whether it's a passage. We have evidence that horses can do it without a bridle at all. There's plenty of horses on the internet that are doing all these difficult movements without a bridle. So can we encourage, incentivize release of pressure instead of keep prosecuting riders for doing the wrong thing?
And if you think we're going full circle back to where we started this conversation, because we said the horse bit his tongue or bit his cheek, but that's only the manifestation of all of this pressure and compression that you're talking about. So remove that, you remove the blood, and we've come at the problem from a different angle, but we've hopefully helped sort it. So
yeah, absolutely. So it's, you know, we need to stick with the learning theory rules of pressure release. If we're using pressure, we know pressure is aversive, and the word aversive means the horse doesn't like it. So, and we know that that horses don't like it precisely because they're so good at learning how to avoid it. That is our 100% proof that they hate it. Yeah. So when it's sufficient to cause tissue damage, then it must be excruciating, you know, as a subjective experience for the horse. If they already don't like a fly landing on their flank when they don't invite it in, then, you know, having all that gear on and a rider pulling on it is not likely to be a good experience. So let's acknowledge that and see how can we incentivize really real lightness, whether it's by showing rein releases, also allowing people to ride in less severe bits in dressage, but that's only going to happen if you incentivize lightness. If you just change the rules on the bridle, but you don't change the way the horses are judged, then you're actually handicapping the horses on the snaffle, because the other horses are hypersensitive to the bit pressure. Yeah, because they're in more pain. They're hypersensitive because they're in more pain. You know, they're either. I'm not saying they're in more pain. They are at risk of more pain because the bridle is so much more severe, and the horse is taking that risk on. So that would be a really good thing, to let people use whatever bridle or no bridle if they wanted to. But you could only do that effectively if you changed the judging rules. I don't know if you know this, but currently in the Dressage Judging Guidelines, it says 37 times that the riders must always maintain a contact. So the judging rules themselves, or guidelines themselves, are disincentivizing rein releases. They're saying that visible rein releases should attract a penalty. And the longer and the more visible the rein release, the more severe the penalty. So, like I said, we have to turn the shop inside out. We have to turn things around a little bit, look at it from a different perspective.
I love how in this podcast I learn something every single time, and that is something I was completely unaware of, Cristina, was the fact that rein releases in dressage are penalised. It's just, it's kind of shocking when you say it out loud like that, isn't it, really? When you think about the fundamentals of training anyone, whether it's a horse or a human, it's so contrary to the principles of training.
Yeah.
I'm smiling. I'm not a rider, but I remember one of the first things you learn when you're riding a pony is to be able to make it, to be able to release that, not to be holding it, but actually will it go with you, just not holding on so tight. So yeah, it brings me right back.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and without changing that idea that it's all about contact, it's going to be really difficult to navigate around the mouth issues, the blood, and not to forget that oral injuries in the mucosa, and that rarely bleed as well. So without proper veterinary oral checking protocols, with a light and with a gag and or maybe not a gag, but with gloves and in a proper place with a light for sure, you can't see anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be, and it's likely a horse can have a really severe oral injury and not be bleeding. And you wouldn't even know. They'll be eating normally. There's a horrendous video on the internet by an equine dental vet who is trying to raise awareness of this fact. And it's a horse grazing in a paddock, and then they do the oral check, and his tongue is hanging out by just a small amount of tissue. It's almost completely severed through a field accident, but the horses just carry on eating. Grazing is their thing, is what they do, is what they want to do, is what they're motivated to do, and they will continue grazing and trying to survive whatever we do to them. So we need to be a little bit more careful on making sure that we are putting the right safeguards in place, I think.
So thank you so much for joining us on Changing Rein.
Thank you both. It's been really enjoyable. I've loved your questions. Thank you.
Changing Rein is brought to you by me, Karen Luke, and my co-host, Mita Osborne. If you enjoyed the show and would like to support us, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps others find us and helps us keep the show going. You can watch this whole episode on YouTube at youtube.com/@changingrein. We love your suggestions, feedback and questions, so please drop us a line. You can email us at team@changingrein.com. Thanks again for listening, and bye for now.